Accessing Agent Files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now here's Brian.
The Libertine-in-Chief here for you once again for a terrible episode of Sovryn Tech. No, I'm just kidding. I always say it's going to be a great episode. And actually, I get plenty of emails saying that they are great, but I wanted to change it, but whatever. Anyway, let's move on. I am back to the normal format of the show this week. Got a lot of good response from last week's episode where I had Stephanie, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy on, and Paige Peterson on, which was just a fantastic episode, I thought, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. So next week, there will be an episode where I do that again. It's been pre-recorded, and I'll let you know right now. I have Mark DeMeasel will be on it, along with, of course, Stephanie will be on it as well. And I thought it was great. It ended up being an episode almost entirely about cryptocurrencies. In reality, I think it was entirely about cryptocurrencies. So check that out next week when it comes out. That'll be episode, God, what episode number are we up to? That'll be episode 83. So this is episode 82. We're almost up to episode 100. Not bad. Wait till you hear what I have planned for episode 99. That's going to be a hell of a thing. Anyway, mentioning Paige Peterson, she started, and I really applaud her courage. She started a Quit Facebook Day event. And I think it's December 1st, 2014 is the day to quit. And so it's, an incentive to just completely get away from this horrific company, out there. And I'm not going to say for certain that I will be taking part in that, but if you do, kudos. And we're going to talk about Facebook a little more later, because, this is one of those companies that just does not give a shit about you. Again, the old saying goes that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? So, but let's move on. So you can check that out, the Quit Facebook Day. You can take a part of that. It'll be, again, I think it's December 1st is the time to end it. Of course, you may ask, well, where to go? Well, go anywhere else other than them. Go to Google Plus, go to, go to Twitter, do RetroShare. Go where? Go to the beach. You can go to the beach. Of course, you just heard from the producer. And anyway, speaking of water, I guess that's not a bad little lead-in. Speaking of water, this is a story. We're going to open up with our rapid-fire stories here. And this is a story that came out a little bit back. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. This is a science story for rapid fire stories here quick. To see someone tell you what I am about to tell you. And no one did. So what am I going to do? The Golden Stallion is going to tell you. That's what. And it's not supposedly, but scientists have found underground oceans. Now, that's kind of a quote unquote. They didn't really find oceans under the earth. This is not a hollow earth theory by any means, but it could get stranger. So essentially what they find is that there is 3 times more water underneath the surface, underneath the crust of the earth, effectively. And it's all inside of deposits of ringwoodite, which is this crystalline, it's not, to call it a rock, this crystalline mineral, whatever. I guess it's a rock more or less. And the water inside of it is almost like sweating. And so they theorize that this is how the oceans came to be, as in the water came up from the earth and created the oceans. This is how the oceans have kept such an incredible level, over such a long period of time, that they've been consistent. And it's all pretty interesting, and not necessarily, I mean, I guess it's shocking, but here's the part that nobody talks about. And now, I'm an atheist, okay? But this story really, kind of hit me strange, because this is, if you take a literal rendition of the book of Genesis, of the first couple chapters, this is almost exactly how it describes the earth, that there was no rain, that the water came up from inside the earth and watered all the plants and etc. Now, a little bit different, certainly, because no one's theorizing that this is how the plants got watered or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty good. And in fact, if you read good luck trying to get a copy of this book. I had the pleasure of owning a copy of it at one point back when I was a Christian. This is kind of a rare book from 1696 by William Whiston. Now, William Whiston was Isaac Newton's best friend. This is a very intelligent guy, albeit a theologian. He also is very famous for writing for translating the works of Josephus, like Antiquities of the Jews. And he wrote a book called A New Theory of the Earth. And in this, he treats, rather reasonably, I have to admit, but he treats the Genesis account of creation as being absolutely literal. Okay. Now, of course, he doesn't think he has kind of a unique twist on it, because he doesn't think that the earth was, made on the first or second day. He thinks that the earth was already there because, the first few verses of Genesis mentions that there's waters in the firmament. And so that's his inclination that, no, there was already an earth, just God, made it for man's use or his dominion. So anyway, but the point I want to get at is that also William Whiston theorized that while there was not rain, because the Bible is very clear that there was no rain at this time, and that was partly what was so terrifying, or what one could theorize was so terrifying during the flood, during Noah's flood, is that when they saw rain coming down from the sky, they're, holy shit, this has never happened before. And so, Whiston says that actually there were crystals, like kind of water crystals, almost like a mist in the air. And so it's kind of odd that you have ringwoodite, which is essentially crystalline structure, and then you have, water coming up from the earth, and that's exactly what the book of Genesis says. I'll give them credit that that's pretty fucking odd that they called that shot. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I am an atheist. I don't believe in the Big Bang. I believe in different theories as far as that goes. I'm open to a couple of them, actually. But I definitely believe that the Earth's been around for, millions and billions of years, okay, and that the universe has been around that long. So, but, granted, so did, William Whiston. He thought that the Earth had been around a lot longer than 6,000 years as well. So anyway, just interesting. This was, guys really thought, and again, Newton thought that that book I mentioned, A New Theory of the Earth, John Locke was a huge fan of the book. Again, Isaac Newton was a huge fan of the book, but of course, Isaac Newton was kind of a real oddball when it came to spiritual matters. Just a really strange, if you ever want to read up on that, it's interesting to hear about. So anyway, that's, I'm shocked that no Christian came out and said, hey, this is proving the biblical literalism of the creation account in Genesis. No one came out and said that. And yet the atheist has to come out and say that, yeah, it smacks awfully close.
No one reads the Bible.
No, yeah. The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy just reminded me that no one reads the Bible. And that's true. I was one of those really, really unique Christians that actually did. Anyway, so let's move on. This is kind of a little bit of a scary thing. Android's stock data wipe apparently is not erasing everything. So when you are selling somebody a phone, or if you are returning a phone to Sprint or Verizon or whoever, I guess with Verizon, it doesn't really matter, right? They're collecting all your data anyway. But the stock Android data wipe does not get rid of everything. And in fact, there were some guys who tested it. They were able to recover lots of photos of people. There was like almost a 40% data retention, I believe is what I read. And that's incredible. So there are alternatives to the stock wipe And there's methods that you can do, like you can wipe it, then log in as someone else, then wipe it again. Kind of, the trick. There's a racing software that does this for PCs, where it will just delete something 50 times in a row to make sure it's just a mess and it can't be retained. So that Android has the same problem, and of course it's all flash memory, and you really can't do as good a job as you could on a good old fashioned platinum inside a regular hard drive. So anyway, so just letting you know about that. You might want to keep that in mind, that the data erase, the wiping that Android does, may not be the best thing in the world. And this is interesting too, because we talked about last week how the Supreme Court, said, look, we recognize that people will wipe stuff if it's a problem. That because the Supreme Court said that you had to have a warrant to get your hands, for police officers, for law enforcement to get their hands on your hand mobile device. But here's the thing. And so, because the police, a lot of law enforcement agencies said, yeah, but what if they wipe the phone? And the Supreme Court said, well, that's the risk that we have to take. But see, here's the thing. Now we find out that might not be that much of a risk. Is that Lookout could wipe it, or you could wipe it with with the Android with Google stock stuff, and they'd still be able to get quite a bit back. So maybe hey, for the conspiracy theorists out there, maybe they'll think that, see, this is why the Supreme Court didn't care, because they know that they can get everything back off of the flash memory inside of these mobile devices. So anyway, just putting that out there. You can look into it for yourself. Voyager, another science story. Voyager 1 has left. It is official that around 2012, I believe, that Voyager 1 has left the solar system. They know about this due to, now this is really something, because and the article that I got this from didn't mention it. So, but that's why I do Sovereign Tech, right? Is because my point of view is not out there, or the finer points I feel that need to be mentioned don't exist, or aren't presented. And with Voyager 1, it has this system on there that actually detects, that sonically represents and detects various radiation. Okay. And this actually creates a form of music. Now, there's a great collection out there called Symphony of the Planets, I believe. And it's like a 6 CD set or something. I still have a digital copy of it, and it's really incredible to listen to. But all it is, it's listening to Voyager going through the solar system, and you're hearing the various radiation that gets picked up by the sensors on Voyager 1, and you're hearing the sounds that makes. And sometimes it's creepy, sometimes it's absolutely beautiful, but it's something. But anyway, they know that essentially a solar gust that would effectually had come out around 2013 that had left the solar system proved that Voyager 1 is out there. So Voyager 1, so yes, humanity has become an extrasolar species. If you want to count it that way. But that's cool. I thought that was pretty great. Here's a, boy, we're going to talk about email seriously in a second, but here's something. Now, I'm a huge fan of Proton Mail. That's protonmail.ch, I believe. Proton Mail is web-based email, encrypted email done absolutely right. And it's being developed by a couple of guys in MIT, even though their business comes out of Switzerland. And they've done a great job. They're doing a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo right now. And what happened is just recently, in the past week, their PayPal account, which they were accepting donations for their Indiegogo, and they had collected $275,000 worth of donations, or contributions, I guess is the more accurate term. And then PayPal froze the account, and no one could donate to it anymore. Ooh, somebody's afraid. Now, you fortunately, you could have still donated with Bitcoin, and actually standard credit card ways you could have donated. But kudos to Bitcoin for still being viable to do that. But how do we know that they were afraid? Because they asked PayPal, why did this happen? There's been Kickstarters and Indiegogos, there's been crowdfunding campaigns that have dealt in the millions of dollars, and Proton Mail wasn't even close to that. Why did Proton Mail get the heat? Well, come to find out, this is PayPal's response. They said, a representative on the phone said he questioned whether Proton Mail is legal and if they have the government approval to encrypt emails. Yes, people are scared of encryption. And it's not, and this is kind of creepy. I mean, who knows what exactly was going through precisely what was going through PayPal's mind. But this is interesting that there does seem to be a campaign in businesses, at least, and maybe in society en masse, to get them to not like the idea of encryption or to be afraid of even using it. And it gets worse when you have, you find out that just recently we find out that there's lists out there being made of anybody that uses encryption technologies like Tor and I2P. You could be in some serious trouble for even using those. And so Proton Mail felt the heat. Now, fortunately, it got cleared up because there was tremendous uproar saying, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? Proton Mail is they're in Switzerland, so who the hell cares what the government, what the United States thinks about it or any legality like that? There's no problem over there. And this is true. A lot of crypto companies are going to Switzerland to open up shop because there isn't so many issues there. So anyway, that did get cleared up. But yeah, I think that kind of tells a story about just how afraid people are of, anonymity and things of that nature. And we need to maybe during Hacksec, we can talk about that more. But moving on, Yelp came out, and we are going to talk about Google here. Yelp came out and claims that Google is manipulating search results to favor its own products like Google+. So Yelp is saying that, hey, we want people to search using our service, using Yelp. But when they go to Google, Google's algorithm is sending them to Google's apps first. And they say they have proof of that. I don't know exactly what that proof is, but they say they have it. So the claim is out there that Google is favoring itself. Now, even if they did that, inherently, what's wrong with that? Nothing, right? I mean, what's wrong with Microsoft, pushing its own products? What's wrong with Apple pushing its own stuff? Nothing. But then maybe there is a problem. And this is our lead story for this week. Because, okay, fine, Google pushes its own thing. But then what happens when Google starts showing favorites to other people? What happens then? Let's read on. Goldman Sachs, this is from Computer World, which, Computer World, boy, 47 years Computer World has been in publication. They just, about 2 weeks ago, we're in July of 2014 right now. Just 2 weeks ago, they actually ended their print run after 47 years. Amazing. Anyway, Computer World, Goldman Sachs, they're going to keep doing their business online, of course. Goldman Sachs asks Google to delete confidential email sent by mistake. The company said an external consultant sent an email by mistake to an unknown person's Gmail account. Google has blocked access to the mail. And it's from July 3rd, 2014 here, so this is hot. Google has blocked access to a sensitive email that was sent by mistake to the Gmail account of an unknown person, according to Goldman Sachs, on whose behalf the email was sent. Now it wants Google to delete the email. The financial services company sought a court order to block access to the email. A spokeswoman for the company wrote in an email Thursday. The order was granted, and Google complied. Google has also told us the email account in question had not been accessed from the time that email was sent, and Google blocked it, she added. Goldman Sachs is now trying to get the email permanently deleted. Google, which operates Gmail, appears willing to cooperate with Goldman Sachs so long as its cooperation is pursuant to a court order, according to a Goldman Sachs court filing. In the filing last week in the Supreme Court of the state of New York, County of New York, Goldman Sachs said that in June, an outside consultant mistakenly sent a copy of an internal report to a Gmail account belonging to an unknown account holder. The consultant was testing changes to Goldman Sachs' internal reporting and validation process and had been asked to email the copy of the report to a, first name, last name @GS, obviously GoldmanSachs.com account. The mistakenly sent email contains certain account and client-related information, according to Goldman Sachs. Emergency relief is necessary to avoid the risk of inflicting a needless and massive privacy violation upon Goldman Sachs' clients and to avoid the risk of unnecessary reputational damage to Goldman Sachs. It said in the filing, which asked the court for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction against Google. Goldman Sachs said in the filing it sent an email to the Gmail address to which the information was sent by mistake, requesting that the recipient delete the mail and confirm in writing the deletion. There has been no response from the recipient, according to the company. Good. The company spoke with an employee of Google's incident response team who said that the email could not be deleted without legal process such as a court order. Google did not immediately comment. So I don't know if Google has eventually deleted the email, but they did go ahead and block it. And here is the issue with this, and this is pretty damning of online email, in my opinion. Now, not Proton Mail. Proton Mail is a kind of a different story. You can't see what's getting sent. And Proton Mail doesn't even see what you're sending back and forth and whatever. So I can't necessarily see how they would even block anything. And in fact, most of these encryption companies are doing things right by being very hands off. Like Proton Mail says, hey, if you forget your password, guess what? You're fucked. Sorry. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't reset it. It's actually what helps create your public key. So I am not attacking Proton Mail in this, but I am attacking a lot of the larger online email address clients. Okay. This is kind of weird because since when does Google whoever thought of this, that you could block an email and that someone would even do that? Now, regardless of whether it's deleted or not, the fact is no one can see this email. Google has it blocked. And they're saying, well, look, if you want us to delete it, we're going to need a court order. But there's nothing stopping them from just blocking it from ever being able to be seen, via Gmail. And this is a real problem. So essentially, people count on email. They expect email to work as well as it does. But what do you do when a company just says, nope, I don't want you to see this? We now know that email is, at the end of the day, email is completely controlled by the email server, by the SMTP server, by, whoever's running it, Yahoo, Google, whatever. I've said in Sovereign Tech in the past that email, we got to come up with something better than email. Well, here is a little fuel for that fire. Because if someone sends you an email, say Edward Snowden, and they knew it was Edward Snowden or whatever, you may never get that email. Or you will never even be able to see it, whatever. And Google is totally within their rights to do that. And what does this even say about Goldman Sachs? I mean, how many people, I wonder, send an email to somebody, okay, do the test, and then contact Google and say, hey, I need you to block this email from being viewed. And let's see what they do. They'll probably be like, yeah, whatever, screw you. But no, if you're Goldman Sachs, oh man, here, let me just bend over for you. I mean, it's crazy that they would even allow for this. I mean, who is Google to decide on that end in the first place? As far as I know, Goldman Sachs isn't even using Gmail apps. Like, that'd be one thing if they're a paying customer and they call up and say, hey, yeah, could you keep this from happening? This is pretty unprecedented, quite frankly, that this sort of thing can occur. So emails can be blocked willy-nilly. You have really no say in the matter. The recipient of this, not that he has any right to the information, has no say in the matter. One could say that, hey, well, I'm glad that this system exists so that if I ever did mess up something, some kind of privacy got out there that I could stop it from getting where it's going. Look, privacy and anonymity and all these things, it is a dangerous game. Okay? No doubt about it. Like, I mean, it takes diligence. It takes, and if you mess up, you mess up. Like I mentioned with Proton Mail, if you forget your password, it's over. You who knows what you could have lost. But that is the price of having privacy or anonymity or having control, having personal control of what you do. This is a real problem. Now, I think if Goldman Sachs emailed anybody, they'd put a stop to whatever is going on. So I can't tell you where there's an email service, except for maybe Proton Mail, or like even Hushmail admits they'll play ball with government. So I don't know, or they'll play ball with whoever. And again, Goldman Sachs is going for a court order. But boy, maybe we need to rethink email now. Who'd have thought it'd go that far? I'll be back with more. This is Sovereign Tech.
We're on the brink of a global finance paradigm shift, and at the core of this movement, Bitcoin. But many early adopters need a safe, stable, and secure method of storing Bitcoin that doesn't require an electronic device. Enter crypto cards, the world's first BIP38 passphrase encrypted, laser-edged aluminum offline wallets. Crypto cards are the same size as a credit card, only they're scratch-resistant, waterproof, and flame-resistant up to 600 degrees. Unlike paper wallets, they won't ever rip, fade, or crumple, and the high-density aluminum is rated to last 75 years. Your coins will be secure for as long as you need. Having Bitcoin physically allows you to store them in a secure location instead of on a networked computer. This is key. Your funds will be impervious to hacks and the negligence of third parties. It's a truly trustless system. You hold the keys, you hold the funds. For more info, visit cryptocards.co. We ship worldwide, and using the code FTL, you'll save 10%. We're proud to be part of a liberty-oriented movement, and the future is looking bright.
Hello, Mr.
Sovereign. Brian Sovereign. And yours?
Natalia. Care to play a game of roulette?
I'd love to.
Number and color?
69. Black.
As you wish. Tech Roulette.
It is time for Tech Roulette, where I get stories sent in to me through the various channels available to you for Sovereign Tech. Of course, there's the email address, sovereigntech@riseup.net, which I can't picture RiseUp would ever block an email from getting around, but then I guess it depends where you're sending it from. That's something I recommend everybody on planet Earth get a RiseUp account and donate to them. I really do. I think that the more people that have those kinds of services, it really sends a statement, and it actually makes everybody else more secure, because like the saying goes, you can't arrest everybody, right? Well, maybe some people think they can, but I don't think that that's really viable. Of course, you can also get in touch with me via BitMessage, as well as, maybe BitMessage, that's the alternative to email that we're looking for, where we have actual control. And some people think that, actually, I have a couple stories I'm going to get to with Tech Roulette, but just to talk a little bit more about the last segment. Some people might think that that's absolutely nuts, that I would suggest that email is not secure or not a good idea. There's a reason BitMessage got developed, and it was to be an email replacement. Okay. Now, I've heard some stories back and forth recently that BitMessage's development may not be up to snuff. But then, like literally a month ago, I heard the exact opposite, that they were delivering the goods and now they no longer. So I don't know. I thought that it looks like it cleaned up pretty well and that it works pretty well. Some people have said that like 50% of their messages aren't getting out or being received, which, boy, wouldn't Goldman Sachs love that? But anyway, so there is BitMessage. Of course, you can also find me on RetroShare. I love RetroShare. This is a phenomenal technology. You can get in touch with me, that way as well. And of course, on Twitter is another way. So anyway, moving on, talk about things that might be going through a drastic change. Can you believe that there's a company out there that is looking to get away from the use of silicon in semiconductor chips? Or in general in computing. And that company is none other than Big Blue. So this is from Forbes, why IBM just bet $3 billion, not million, $3 billion of its research budget on the death of Moore's Law. We'll read a bit here. When IBM announced the $3 billion commitment to even tinier semiconductor chips that no longer depended on silicon on Wednesday, the big news was that IBM's putting a lot of money into a future for chips where Moore's Law no longer applies. But on second glance, the move to spend billions on more experimental ideas like silicon photonics and carbon nanotubes shows that IBM's finally shifting large portions of its research budget into more ambitious and long-term ideas. Since 1965, chip makers have operated under Gordon Moore's observation that they would be able to double the number of transistors in a 1-inch diameter area of silicon roughly every 2 years. Companies like Intel and IBM have proven Moore correct, largely by cramming even smaller transistors more densely into silicon wafers. We currently can make chips with transistor gates just 22 nanometers wide, with 14 nanometer chips coming soon. For reference, an average strand of human hair is about 100,000 nanometers wide. So far finer, I mean, like on orders of magnitude finer than a human hair. But listeners of this show probably already knew that. IBM's spending much of its $3 billion to push for 7 nanometer silicon chips. As research executive John Kelly said in a statement in the company's release, IBM is no longer doubtful whether 7 nanometer chips is possible. The question is how to produce them at acceptable prices. Much of the money, however, is allocated to post-silicon technologies that are still more commercial pipe dreams, but will be needed to make chips brawny and low-powered enough to handle advanced computing needs. They include quantum computing, neurosynaptic computing that makes the chips channel more data, more like a human brain, and silicon photonics that transmit pulses of light instead of using physical copper wire. IBM's also looking to replace the materials used in a chip themselves, testing carbon nanotubes as an alternative to transistors and graphene as a smaller and more efficient replacement for the existing silicon semiconductors. If that all sounds a bit science fiction-y, that's because much of it is, like looking at slow trains today and envisioning Elon Musk's concept for an ultra-high-speed Hyperloop. But the money, $600 million a year for 5 years, is very real. IBM tells Forbes the $3 billion isn't additional money being added to its R&D spend, an area where analysts have told Forbes they'd like to see more aggressive cash commitments in the future. IBM will still spend about $6 billion a year on R&D, 6% of revenue. 10% of the research budget, however, now has to come from somewhere else to fuel these more ambitious chip projects. IBM didn't say where the money will come from on Wednesday, but the company is rumored to be close to selling its manufacturing unit that makes all its existing chips to Santa Clara, California chipmaker Global Foundries. Forbes contributor Roger Case sees that Wednesday's news as a sign that IBM won't be getting out of silicon anytime soon, even if the sale goes through. With Global Foundries reported to be primarily interested in IBM's engineers from that unit, this news may also be a signal of how IBM plans to shift headcount in its chip business. IBM isn't going to spend more in total on its research, at least for now. But CEO Ginny Rometty seems intent to spend her money a bit more ambitiously. Making chips doesn't make IBM money today, but commercializing a post-silicon chip could be worth many billions. If the alternatives were trying to figure out a costly turnaround of the unit or giving up on chips altogether, reallocating $600 million a year and hiring a different breed of moonshot-minded chip engineer appears to have been a capital commitment that proves easier for management to swallow. Okay, what's the end game here? I'll tell you what the end game is here. There's a key word right in the middle of this article, and it's neurosynaptic computing. And neurosynaptic computing is literally trying to make electronics, trying to make computing, like it said, work more like the human brain. Why is this of interest to IBM? Watson is the AI that IBM has been developing for some time. It is the AI that can defeat Kasparov. It's the championship chess player. Watson is, for IBM, they considered it the future. It is at the very heart of their Smart Planet system, which, boy, if you ever want to read a doozy stuff, read their Smart Planet plans. They have this whole, I mean, they really, IBM, Big Blue, a lot of people think Big Blue kind of went by the wayside, especially when they started selling stuff off. Like they sold off their computer line, the ThinkPads to Lenovo. They've sold off a few other server farms. Then, of course, this article is talking about selling off chips to global foundries, their silicon business anyway. And it's clear that in my opinion, that what IBM's doing here, and this is the beauty of you getting to send in stories to Tech Roulette, on Sovryn Tech, is because, if you want my opinion on something, I get to give it to you, whatever you want me to talk about. What's clear is that they have this huge plan for what they call a smart planet, which includes smart grids, all this stuff, a lot of stuff which Google is also getting into. Okay. So IBM is still a major player. And in fact, if you look at their stock prices, again, most computer, most consumer level computer users or tech enthusiasts see IBM as like, oh, it's IBM. What do they even matter anymore? Well, they matter. And they would seem to have very big plans. And I think AI is a huge part of it. And that's why this is really all about figuring out how to handle neurosynaptic computing better. Now, they talked about carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are these essentially indestructible. It's this indestructible material. It's incredible. In fact, carbon nanotubes, now they get created through various degrees of high heat, but carbon nanotubes is not a new idea. It's actually a very old idea, whether humans knew they were using it or not, because some people theorize that carbon nanotubes, that when Japanese sword makers were making katanas and wakizashis, that they actually, sometimes they got the blade so hot and folded so tightly and so well that the blade actually became a carbon nanotube itself. And that's where some of these legendary abilities of katanas to hack through multiple heads or multiple trees or whatever, that's where that came from. So carbon nanotubes are practically indestructible. And if you are going to do computing processes that mimic the human brain, it's a good idea to want to get away from silicon. It's a good idea to look into using that. And that is happening. So that is what I think is actually going on. Again, Forbes doesn't tell you this. Nobody's telling you this because most people aren't willing to go out on a limb. But me, myself, I have absolutely nothing to lose. And so I will say the crazy shit that everyone else is afraid to. Sorry. That might have come off like a boast. I'm not boasting. I'm just saying, I don't get why some of these people won't write this stuff up. And I look on Twitter, I'm looking for people to make these comments for me so I don't have to. And I can just link to the story on Twitter and say, oh yeah, this is a great write-up, but nobody does it. So anyway, share the show with your friends if you want people to hear something that maybe they just won't hear anywhere else. But let's move on. That's the deal with IBM, is that's where they're looking. The next story comes from Business Insider. And, yes, you can laugh about Business Insider, but Wall Street memo admits that cyber attack could be devastating for the economy. Government and industry action against cyber attacks isn't moving fast enough for Wall Street. Now banks are proposing a cyber war council to defend against future threats to their data. This isn't the government doing this. This is Wall Street. Okay, this is banks doing this. According to a Bloomberg report, the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association, that's SIFMA, has submitted a proposal for a committee of executives to protect banks from cyber terrorism. The group would work on active defense strategies and speedy communication between agencies and the private sector if an attack were to occur. The members would come from the Treasury Department, the NSA, the Department of Homeland Security, and other U.S. agencies already on board to help facilitate these efforts. Guess who it is? Former NSA Director Keith Alexander. Woo! They got the big one. Just when you thought, because why did he leave, right? It's like, oh yeah, clearly I've messed things up. I let Snowden get through. I didn't do my job very well, so I am going to gracefully bow out and then go work for Wall Street. Yeah, who got the better deal? Anyway, let's see, who else? Oh, and former U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff. And boy, he's a real winner, isn't he? Anyway, in the document, SIFMA explains that because the financial markets are so dependent on the electric grid, any cyber attacks that wipe out accounts could cause widespread panic. The recovery of the accounts would be difficult and slow and could lead to a loss of investor confidence in bank runs. Cybersecurity have been a growing concern for Wall Street banks. Last year, the Financial Times reported more than half of the security exchanges in the world fought off cyber attacks in the past year. Here are Bloomberg's excerpts from the document. The systemic consequences could well be devastating for the economy, as the resulting loss of confidence in the security of individual and corporate savings and assets could trigger widespread runs on financial institutions that likely would extend well beyond the directly impacted banks, security firms, and asset managers. Wait a minute, what are they worried about widespread runs on financial institutions for? Oh, it's because they don't actually have any money in them. Moving on. We are concerned that the industry may not have the capabilities that we would like to effectively defend against this newer form of potential attack. The capability that we would like to stop such an attack once commenced from spreading to other financial institutions, or the capability we would like of effectively recovering if an initial attack is followed by waves of follow-on attacks. The core problem is that if transformers and critical equipment were destroyed at these sites, it could take months to build the replacement equipment. So this is pretty big. What does all that mean? First off, they kind of revealed their hand in the paper. I don't know how well they planned for this paper to get out, but it did. And they sort of revealed their hand in that, look, we are concerned that if a cyber attack occurred against the banking system as we know it, and this probably includes World Bank, IMF, all that good shit. Good shit is, of course, sarcasm. That people would make a run on the banks and get all their money out. And why can't that happen? See, there's two things that they're really afraid of. That's number one that they're afraid of, is that people will rush the banks. What happens when people rush the banks? Look, banks don't, I'm sure most of my listeners already know this, but in case you don't, banks don't have, when you deposit $100,000 into the bank, you're lucky if you could access a tenth of that at any given time that you need. If you went to the physical bank, now I'm not talking about if you use a debit card, then you could access the whole thing because it's all just cards, flipping around everywhere. Okay. But if you go to the bank and you said, look, I want to take out $50,000, they are going to tell you, come back tomorrow, because they don't have it. They rely on the fact that you will use other things like checks, debit cards, whatever, to actually access that store of value that you yourself earned and owned. Okay, so they are terrified that if anything happens to consumer confidence or to client confidence, that these bank runs will occur, and then the banks are just completely fucked because they don't really have that money. That money is just getting tossed around, Peter to pay Paul, all that good shit. Okay, so that's the first thing they're concerned about. The second thing that they are really concerned about is that they're not concerned about you. They're not concerned about your funds. They're concerned about your attitude, about how you feel about, the safety of your funds, but they're really not concerned about your funds. They're concerned, in my opinion, they're concerned about people seeing what's going on inside their system. They're concerned over the fact that if someone attacked them, that their golden parachutes would fall apart. They're setting up a cyber war council not to defend against crackers or maybe heroic hackers. They're setting it up to defend their system from everybody else out there. They're afraid of the internet, frankly. And it's ironic because in many ways, I think the banking system, this is something I've mentioned at some talks that I've given when I'm asked about this. But I think the banking system is actually what made the internet into the monstrosity that it is right now. Because it wasn't until 2003 that really banking became such a big deal online. And then once suddenly people could do that, then they were a little more interested in it. And that's when bill paying became really possible online. Yes, there were companies that could do it before. Of course. Of course there were. I'm talking about on an en masse level, okay, on a mass adoption level. It wasn't until around 2002, 2003 to where suddenly you could do everything online. Okay, as far as banking goes. And so I think a lot of these, a lot of the security issues, etc., didn't really happen. They weren't that big of an issue on the big bad internet before that time frame, because there wasn't anything that people that get afraid of things like banks had even, had up there to access. And so I think that the growth of the internet as we know it really did come from from banks getting involved in it. And that's when the internet stopped being, because the original plan, hear me out, okay? The original plan for the internet, the original idea for the internet, you can watch commercials, okay, from 96, 97, maybe even earlier. And the way they show the internet was just this gigantic store of knowledge. It was not a shopping mall. Okay. It was just this gigantic store of knowledge where you could essentially find everything. I use the word essentially a lot, don't I? You could find everything in books, whatever book you're wanting to find out about, you could get right to the page where this exact quote was made, and you could find it and you could read about it. And it was just this huge library. That's why it was used to be called the information superhighway, because it was supposed to be the store of information. It was not meant to be eBay. It was not meant to be Amazon. It was not meant to be your interaction with the banks and not seeing tellers anymore. It was not supposed to be any of that. It's when those groups, and I don't necessarily mean like buying stuff. That's great that you can do a degree of entrepreneurship and whatever. But it's when those groups like banks and whoever else that moved in, that suddenly the internet became such a thing as it is now. And I think it's also why it became so adopted, because again, businesses moved in and this is how they wanted people to interact with the businesses. And to some degree it makes sense, because that way you don't have to actually have people in your buildings for you to deal with. You can just do it all online. But be clear that this was not what people, when ARPANET, when the government said, look, we're done with ARPANET, which was the original implementation of the internet. We don't care about this anymore. Here you go. Do what you want with it. And they released it to colleges and private institutions and whatever. This is what they thought of doing. Of course, it was meant for learning. It was not designed to even be used by these fuckers. It wasn't. And then it became that way. And then suddenly, we have all these problems. And of course, now we have the NSA that's keeping an eye on everything. And it's really convenient that so much gets done online of these, so many complicated transactions. So much of your meat space life has been integrated into the digital life, forcibly, admittedly, to a real extent, I think, that now the NSA can say, look, we've got to keep an eye on things online. Otherwise, society is going to collapse. Online was never meant to do that. You can make the case that we're better off with online banking. You can make the case that that's kind of how Bitcoin works or whatever. But I would argue against all of that. I would argue that any kind of networking should be the enhancement, not the replacement, but the enhancement of interaction. And I think that networking should also be incredibly localized. Okay. And they know this too. In this article, Wall Street's even admitting we got to make the cyber warfare, war council, because we got to make sure that if one system goes down, that the others don't. They all know that this is the best way to have a redundant and secure system, is to not have it centralized. They're admitting to it. But are they ever going to do that for us? No, we have to do that on our own. We have to really, it's up to us to either do it better, like MadeSafe, or to come up with our own systems again, like BBSs, where we can have that redundance and security and privacy, perhaps. If we implement it in that way. So, just don't kid yourself that somehow Wall Street taking it so seriously, the concern about getting a cyber attack has anything to do with you. No, it's just to protect them and them alone. because the measures that they're talking about taking, they're not offering to everybody else, and they should. They really should. So I thought it was an interesting article that was going to happen. And hey, just think of this, Keith Alexander was keeping you safe for years. Now he gets to keep your money safe in the bank because he did such a great job when he was the head of the NSA. The problem with audio, sarcasm doesn't always come through. Hopefully it did there. I'll be back with more.
Hey, Brian, what's that funny sticker over your laptop webcam? I was trying to spy on you while you were in the shower, but now I can't.
See, that's why I have it. And it's from EFF.org.
EFF, what's that?
It's the Electronic Frontier Foundation, totally donor-funded organization that fights for internet freedom, privacy.
Wow, that sounds great. So EFF.org, I support internet freedom and privacy, and maybe you do too.
Yeah, and you can support them with Bitcoin.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation at EFF.org. You're a lucky man, Mr. Sovryn. Not many win so well at the game of chance.
That's because it's not a game of chance, Natalia. It's a game of choice.
Game of choice.
Woo! It is time for Game of Choice. And this week's Game of Choice, I got to tell you, I had no idea that this thing existed. It was pure happenstance that I came across it. Maybe it wasn't happenstance because I go to PCGamer.com all the time, and I think that's where I initially heard about it. But I tell you about this game with a metaphorical, an allegorical, a proverbial tear in my eye. And it's Wings of Saint Nazaire. I think I pronounced that right. Okay. And it's Nazaire. Of course, you can go to sovereigntech.com, click on this episode. All the show notes are there and links are there for you to check everything out that I ever talk about, generally. And it's Wings of Saint Nazaire. Okay. And what this is, okay, well, let me give you the read. Wings of Saint Nazaire is a retro space combat sim in the vein of Wing Commander and X-Wing, developed today. What more do you need to hear? What are you doing? Turn off the fucking podcast. Go download it. Holy shit. Why are you still here? This is amazing. It is, and it's completely cross-platform. It can be played on OS X, Linux, and Windows, not mobile yet anyway. You can even play it in your browser if you're using Windows or OS X, so you don't even have to install it. But you have to have, it uses the Unity engine, I believe. So you have to have the Unity client, or the Unity extension plugin, I should say, for your browser to be able to do that. But you can play it right in your browser, and it's in alpha right now. It's just an alpha. This is really fresh, really hot. Literally just got done to where they released something, and I messed with the alpha for about 2 minutes before I broke down into tears and cried like a little boy. No. Inside, I was certainly doing that. It was so beautiful to see. The functions, I felt very much like I hopped into a TCS Aero, or I hopped into, an X-Wing or an A-Wing, and was just going to town and flipping through. I mean, and especially if you've played these games before, it's really intuitive, and the joystick, the joystick compatibility works great, by the way. But it was really intuitive to where I was automatically, just like I did with Wing Commander or with X-Wing or TIE Fighter, where I was flipping through, power levels, shield levels, laser levels, all the good stuff, and accelerating, decelerating, down was up and up was down. It was perfect. It's perfect. It's so good. It's beautiful. And I haven't found a machine yet that it really couldn't run on. So this should run decently on even more antiquated hardware. Crank this thing on. Again, it's just an alpha. We got to wait. But it was so good, and the music was so good. Everything. I mean, it didn't sound like necessarily like a good old fashioned MIDI would on Wing Commander or on a Star Wars flight sim from back in the 90s. But God, you had that feel. I mean, and the triumphant kind of drums start playing, and Yeah, I mean, you can flip through, fire all 4 cannons, fire 2, whatever the case may be. Just fantastic. You have no idea what's going on. There's no story built into the alpha. The alpha is just you launch from the ship and you go. And it was cool. Actually, launching from the ship felt very much like you used to with in Battlestar Galactica. Not that crap that they made in the 2000s. I'm talking about the one from 78 or from 79. 78. And, where you get launched out of a turbo tube. Buck Rogers did the same thing. Buck Rogers and 25th Century, of course, both made by Glenn Larson. So I'm sure he really liked the effect of like a first. That was really ahead of its time, honestly, getting shot out of a turbo tube, because it was a first person experience that you could get on the TV back in 78 to like 81. And that was actually, I think that was his plan. That was Glenn Larson's plan, was to give you that experience like you were, you're watching TV and you felt the exhilaration of jetting out of that. And so now, though, you can play Wings of St. Nazaire. I got off topic. You can play Wings of St. Nazaire and you can jet out of there, out of the turbo tube, and then, just go nuts. Fly around, start blasting, have a good time, just like it was 1994. All over again. And, the gameplay's still solid. So check it out. I loved it. wingsofstnazaire.com. You can find it in the show notes at sovereigntech.com. I'll be back with
more. Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
To get an idea of how seldom it is that couples have intercourse while standing face-to-face, you might do a search of websites where amateur couples post clips of themselves making love. You'll quickly find that the only time couples usually have intercourse while standing is when it's rear entry, and when the woman's able to lean forward on a piece of furniture. One of the problems with intercourse while standing and being face-to-face, or undies down, skirt up, as Cosmo calls it, is that it can feel like a workout at the gym. Trying to thrust while bending your knees to get the angle just right can be exhausting. Having sex face-to-face while standing might actually work better when the woman is taller than the guy, or if she's standing on a step or on a stool that's sturdy and won't slip. Some women even wear heels or platform shoes if they know they'll be using this position. Leaning against a wall can always help, and some women say it works best for them if they can keep one leg firmly planted on the ground while tucking the other around a partner's waist. That way she doesn't have to worry about him dropping her, and having the other leg up can improve the angle and the amount of stimulation. He can also reach under that leg and help her to hold it in place. And whether you do or don't have a leg to stand on, keep in mind this position usually isn't people's favorite.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
You are quite the man, Mr. Sovryn. Are you busy tonight?
Natalia, if you'll excuse me, I just received a very important email.
Later then, Mr. Sovryn. Important email.
It is time for Important Email, where you get to send in emails to me, sovereigntech@riseup.net, or, of course, you can get in touch with me through BitMessage, RetroShare, Twitter, mentioned them all before. Plenty of ways to get in touch with the show, and please feel free to do so. I have so many listener emails or important emails that, to get through, and I'm going to try and get through a few of them right now. I want to get to at least 3. One of the ones I probably won't get to in this episode, but I will get to it, is I think this is a really important topic, is someone emailed me about valuing life, and in particular, valuing one's own life. And I will get to that. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that today, though. Let's see. We'll start off with first one. Okay. Golden Stallion, have you ever been in an orgy? Yes, many. That's not a boast. Seriously, it's not. In fact, one of them I had a very, very bad interaction during it. So anyway, please don't think it's all good times or anything. Anyway, so let's see what else we got here. Would you be willing to discuss how you came to anarchy? Okay, that's a good question. And actually, the other question I got is about voting, so that they might lead in nicely to each other. How I got into anarchy, well, how I got into liberty, I think is I guess where that should sort of start. And let's just say that while I was in the military, I found a book. The book happened to be The Anatomy of the State. And it was an incredible little book by Murray Rothbard. I still keep a copy of it at all times. And I mean, it's a small, short book. And Anatomy of the State, it brought up the argument that, and this is interesting, as far as talking about voting. So maybe I should talk about voting first. Anyway, Anatomy of the State brings up, Murray Rothbard, who is a Jew like myself, or who was, talks about how if 75% in a representative democracy, if 75% of the population votes to kill the other 25% of the population, is that voluntary suicide on the part of that other 25% of the population? Is that just, hey, we voted, this is democracy, too bad. And when I read that, that really hit me at how ridiculous the idea of democracy is when I heard that. So I very much, that really struck me. It still took me years to get over the idea, that really any government was bad. I continued to vote up until pretty close to when I moved to New Hampshire, and that was in 2011. It was October 28th, 2011 when I moved to New Hampshire. One of the greatest days of my life. you tend to remember that. I voted. I kind of got on the policy of voting third party exclusively. And now I was in New York, New York State. And in New York, actually, third parties, the way the voting system works in New York, third parties can actually win, and they have won in the past. So I didn't see voting as entirely worthless at the time, because I saw it as a way of just, fucking with the two-party system that is so common everywhere else. But at the end of that, it didn't change anything at all. And I used to get, especially when I was in New York, I used to go to town meetings or city meetings, and no matter what I did, no matter what influence I could even try to carry, and in those areas, honestly, my family's influence was pretty high. You couldn't, nothing could change. They were still going to raise your property taxes. They were still going to pull all the bullshit that they've always pulled. And so, realizing that after years of trying to fight within the system, you really find out that, look, fighting the system may be in and of itself perpetuating the system. Okay. So I guess I'm talking about voting first, because that was the other question was, you said that voting is worthless. How can you say that? That's how I can say it, is that voting and all this in-system action just doesn't fly. And in fact, quite frankly, when a lot of people tell me that, voting is like self-defense, or that voting, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain or whatever, or people that in general, and there's lots of them in New Hampshire, believe me, they want to work within New Hampshire's system, and they make a lot of claims, all, blah, 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 of the successes that have occurred out of that, which are, by and large, yeah, they're good, but I don't know, like, so what? If you dedicated all that time to, not being incremental in your changes, how greater of a change could you make? I wonder. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons I think working within the system is a bad idea. But this is the challenge that I make to people who advocate working within the system, is that if you believe in, let's say you're an anti-war advocate, okay, then the best thing that you can do if you believe in working within the system is to join the military, not pull a trigger. And don't be a conscientious objector. Go overseas, put your money where your mouth is, and when they say fire, don't fire. If working within the system is such a great idea. So, that's it. That's not what it's about. It's people feeling like doing something. They feel like they're doing something that's without breaking out of their comfort zone. Okay, I think that's the appeal to political action. Is that it doesn't, because if you're not going to do political action, if you're not going to vote, if you're not going to get involved with all that stuff, all of which is really pretty passive, you got to admit. Okay, if you're not going to do those things, then then what do you have left to do? What are you forced essentially to do if you are going to live on your principles? You're going to have to be forced to work on yourself if you're not going to work on the system. And I think that terrifies the shit out of people, that they might have to work on themselves and look in themselves, and they may not like what they find. So I get the appeal. Okay. But I think that, I had somebody complain about me saying okay a lot. Feel free to tell me if you think that that's an issue. Actually, that same person said I need to be removed from Sex and Science Hour. And hey, if you think so, let me know. Really, I didn't get mad at the guy. I didn't even, it was pretty public and I didn't go crazy on it. But, he hid behind the mask of anonymity and, give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth, right? Anyway, where I was, so that's with working within the system. I think that's largely the appeal to it, is that you don't have to get uncomfortable. Because like I said, if you really wanted to work within the system, if you really wanted the government to stop killing people, then get in the system, get in the positions, police officer, military, even IRS agent, whatever. Get in the positions of the people with the guns. And when you are told to fire, don't shoot. Then you tell me how working within the system works so well. But no one does that. No one's willing to do that one because they can't do that from their couch. Or they can't do that from driving down the street and then going home and popping on the TV. No, voting does not work. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep asking what's for dinner, right? That's the old saying. So no, I don't think voting works. And again, people will say, well, it's in self-defense to vote against this stuff. No, not really. I don't see that is really valid, because we see time and time again in the court system and elsewhere that if they want to do something, they being the monopolizers on the use of force, they're going to do it no matter what. They'll pull an executive order. And that's the same thing. People are like, well, don't you think jury duty is a good idea, Golden Stallion? No, I don't. Because if they want that guy locked up, they're going to lock him up. It doesn't matter what you do. So it's little different than indentured servitude. It's slavery to say you must appear in court. Okay. Now, if you do it, and please, I'm sorry, I apologize. If you do any of these things, okay, and it's like all you can do or whatever, do it. Okay. You have to do something. People, one of the true gauges if someone is a principled person is that somehow they have to do something about acting upon their beliefs. Okay. And so I respect anyone that does that. Please don't confuse what I'm saying. But if you're asking me and you're telling me that I'm crazy for saying these things, I'm going to tell you why I think perhaps the reverse. Okay. So that's why I say this. So please don't take me too strongly. All right. I am pleased when people are acting upon their principles. I really am. It is far more important to me that they do that than they live in contradiction of themselves. Okay. So let's see. I think I covered that pretty well. The voting thing. Moving on. So how did I become an anarchist? Okay. So that like I was saying, I found the book that showed the fallacy of democracy, and whether it's a representative democracy with a republic, with senators and representatives and all that, whatever. The idea of that is just plain as day, in my opinion, that it's a fallacy, that it's not, that it's not, it doesn't work for everyone's freedom. And so again, I voted third party most of the time. I will admit this, and I've admitted it before. I almost, believe this or not, voted for Obama, because for a moment I believed that he would have closed Guantanamo Bay. And talk about voting in self-defense. that's as big a vote of self-defense as I think you could almost get. So, but I realized that just wasn't true, that he wasn't going to close it. And in fact, now they have, people are saying, oh yeah, he's going to finally close it now. No, he's not. There's a Senate bill going through to increase the size of Guantanamo Bay. I think they call it Camp 6. So bullshit. They'll do what they want. Your vote means nothing. Even honestly, on a local level, they'll just tell you, shut up, you can't talk. Watch some of the stuff from Free Keen if you want to see proof of that. Anyway, so as far as me becoming an anarchist, one day I came upon Lysander Spooner. I was just, and I don't even know how I came upon, it was certainly through Wikipedia. I don't know how exactly it happened, but I came upon Lysander Spooner and I started reading his work. And he just wrote this real quick quip in one of his books, or maybe more accurately, a pamphlet, where he said, "Did you sign the Constitution? I didn't. How could it possibly apply to you?" And of course, he wrote this in the 19th century. And I read that and it just clicked. I ran over to my good friend Seamus and I was like, Seamus is like, the Constitution, we didn't sign it. How could it possibly apply to us? What could it possibly mean? And it was really that simple. That's for someone to just say, because before I was still kind of holding on to this idea of that, Constitution, woohoo, Constitution. And then I got to the point where actually I says like, actually the Constitution sucks. Let's the Articles of Confederation. That's really what we needed, was the Articles of Confederation, which is what the governance system before the Constitution. And then I realized even that, again, once I read Spooner, I was just like, well, wait a minute, no, all of this is crap because you didn't agree to it. You did not give your consent. So that's really what tipped me over. That's what made me into a full-on anarchist. I mean, I was already becoming an anarchist pretty well anyway, but that's really what did it. I didn't become an atheist again yet, but I think that's something that's pretty commonplace. A lot of anarchists actually aren't atheists, and I think that's a contradiction myself. It's okay if you have spiritual beliefs, if you have a religion. It's all right, okay? I hope you realize from earlier in Sovereign Tech today that I will give credit where credit's due. Okay, when I find something that's really intriguing that perhaps a religion put out and, put it on God. So please, if you are, okay, I see it as a contradiction myself. Again, there are plenty of people whom I respect that are religious and are anarchists. Now, I think that a lot of them, especially a lot of the anarchists that are Catholic, and there are a lot, like at the Mises Institute, I think they use Catholicism, they use Christianity in general as a cop-out. Oh, the irony. They use it as an excuse. They use it as, look, we can have anarchy, okay? Because even, I know you're concerned. You're saying that without government, justice isn't going to get served. But that's okay, because in the end, Jesus Christ will dispense that justice. I am the Lord thy God, vengeance is mine. Okay, and so that's what I think. I think a lot of people hold on to Christianity, that are anarchists, so that they can say, look, don't worry, it all gets worked out in the end. We just, man is not good enough to dispense laws and all that stuff, blah, 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 which I somewhat agree with that point. I just don't know that there's a God out there. In fact, if God made some of these laws, he sucks. But anyway, so, I understand that there are people who are anarchists that are not atheists. I was that way for a very short period of time, but very quickly when I accepted anarchism, when I became an anarchist, I realized, no, any kind of control, any kind of centralized planning, which God is antithetical to happiness, to human growth, to self-worth. And yeah, I just, I snapped out of religion. I mean, there are other reasons too that I snapped out of it. There are a lot of personal reasons that I realized that, that religion was for me nonsense. So anyway, yeah. And once I became an anarchist, all kinds of things just started falling away from my life. I knew that I didn't have to stay in a relationship that was making me unhappy. And so I left that. And when I became an anarchist, I went, full on board. And I was like, look, I need to get somewhere where there are more of me, because in the middle of New York, there were none. And I've always felt, I talk about this all the time, and we're going to talk about Facebook more in a minute. But I've always felt that online interactions are just so cheap. They don't hold up. Now, that said, I'm a huge fan of cybersex. Okay. That can be really, really fun. But other than that, you can kind of get to know people, but it's just not the same as really being there, with the person. And so the fact that I could interact with people online, with other anarchists online, and I had started to, that's nice, but it really wasn't enough. I wanted to really be around, anarchist people so that I could really flourish in my ideas. And so, that's why I moved to the Free State Project. I moved to New Hampshire and did that. And actually, ironically, I was not, when I first moved to New Hampshire, the first couple months, I was tempted to leave because I was not happy with the there were a lot of people I met here that it wasn't what I thought it would be. The people weren't having the big discussions. They weren't enacting the big things. They weren't acting on principles and ways, and it's all on how I thought about it. Now, people, whatever, do what they want. I don't care. Okay. But when I came here, I was certainly expecting something completely different. And so it never made me question being an anarchist, but I certainly was like, this might not be the place for me. It's like nobody reads books here. Nobody, there's so many things that came to fore for me. But then months later, actually, I realized that there was plenty of people here that shared my ideals. So, but I wonder, can people be as strong, in their anarchist beliefs and in holding on to that and to acting within their principles when they're completely on their own? Maybe. But it certainly does help when there's a bunch of people around to understand you. So my journey into anarchy, maybe not the most exciting story in history, but you asked. And so, I wanted you to know how that goes and sort of the rationalizations that occurred within my mind, which were very few that had to happen. But when they happened, I was absolutely sure of them. So, and that's a very comforting place to be in. That can bring a whole lot of happiness, is when you know what you believe. And I'll be back with more. This is Sovereign Tech.
Hey, look! Got an energy spike. Hold on! Launch. Bombing the Narn back to the Stone Age wasn't enough for you?
Then we heard it. The sound of something terrible being born.
This is madness. Station 3 to Commander Ivanova.
Centauri have launched a full-scale assault.
Time is coming on! It's our turn now!
2 million tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night. A world where empires rise and fall, where dreams are born and die, where war and hatred are challenged by love and faith. In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity. It is our last, best hope for peace, for victory, for freedom. It is Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5. Agent Sovereign, go to this webpage and follow. What kind of webpage is this? Is that Natalia? I better go to the
Website of the Week.
It is time for Website of the Week, where I cover a website that's useful. And, sometimes, or, it could be a terrible website too, or funny. But sometimes the Website of the Week and Software of the Week can be kind of blurred, right? Because sometimes a website in our cloud world will really be software. So, and this is certainly the case, but Website of the Week and Software of the Week are going to be interrelated, and you'll see how eventually. But anyway, this week, my Website of the Week is coinprism.com. and that's coin, COINPRISM.com. And what this is pretty incredible. This is a web wallet for Bitcoin, but not just Bitcoin, but for colored coins. Ooh. What are colored coins? Colored coins is an idea that is kind of a meta layer on Bitcoin. Colored coins is the idea that Bitcoin could represent things other than currency, other than money. Okay. And that it's a pretty cool idea. And this is something that other technologies, Bitcoin 2.0 technologies, are really trying to pull off. And so, like NXT is doing a great job of pulling that together. BLACKCOIN's trying to pull that together. Again, listen to next week's Sovryn Tech to hear about a whole shit ton about all that. And you have some others that are trying to do this. There's Counterparty and Mastercoin, I guess. But you have colored coins, which is the idea in general of just this meta layer where you can assign Bitcoins as tokens to represent other things. And this is an idea that to some degree exists, and Coin Prism actually allows you to do it. You can create different addresses for different colors of the coin on there. So it could essentially, with colored coins, like a red coin could represent a car or something like that. It doesn't, it could, it's kind of a smart property idea. And so, it can do just about anything. And this is really the first, Coin Prism's been out for a while, but as far as I know, it's one of the very first implementations of a Bitcoin and colored coin wallet out there. Maybe there's a client side one, as in one you install on your computer, and I didn't know about it, but this is the one that I've seen, and it's pretty basic, and I like it. It's very simple to use, very simple to sign up with, doesn't require a whole ton of information to use. Now, how many people are using colored coins? Is there a set standard for how colored coins are going to work? Not exactly, but this is something to check out if you are interested by this idea. And this idea is starting to get used in a whole bunch of implementations, which is, like I said, why you're going to want to hear Software of the Week this week, because we're going to talk about that. See what you can do, Now, my own opinion is that actually there's at least a couple projects out there that are doing Bitcoin better than Bitcoin does. And so really my whole energies are based on that. But there are some people who are Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. And if you are that way, rock and roll. Okay. But I don't want to leave you out if you are a person who only wants to concentrate on Bitcoin. And so Coin Prism is here for you to use. It's real. It exists. And I like that. That's a huge thing that in the tech world that people look for. It's what Steve Jobs said, real artists ship. Okay. And so Coin Prism has shipped. It's here, and it is a colored coin wallet. And you can just use it as a regular Bitcoin wallet too. And it all works pretty well, but it runs on the Open Assets protocol. So everything's open source. Again, may want to look into things for yourself. I don't know if I would be I wouldn't put a whole ton of Bitcoin on any web wallet. Okay. But if you put a little bit of money on Coin Prism just to test it out and to mess with the color coin feature and all of that, no harm done. I say, check it out. What the hell? And I hope, I want Bitcoin to get better. I want Bitcoin to implement a lot of these features that we're seeing out of NXT and BLACKCOIN. Okay. Again, that we're seeing. I'm not talking, there's other projects out there, but they haven't shipped. They're not out there. So let's talk about what exists. That's what we're doing right now. So like NXT, like BLACKCOIN, they've got stuff out there. I want to see that. Okay. I want to see that for Bitcoin. I like the idea of there being a ton of currencies, a whole ton of currencies. So, and actually, but since we're on the subject of currencies, real quick, I just want to mention that I no longer check the show notes because the amount of currencies that I accept has changed. Like BitShares and Aurora Coin, I've actually removed those as donatable, but everything else is still there. Be back with more.
Hey, everybody, it's Stephanie. I am the Sovryn Tech producer. But did you know I am also a voiceover artist? Yes, it's true. I make audiobooks, commercials for your business. I narrate explainer videos, pretty much any audio project that you can think of, I'm probably willing to work on it, or I have worked on it in the past. And if you want to hear some samples of my previous work, or you want to find out a little bit more about what I do, then I encourage you to check out my voiceover website, which is smvoice.info, smvoice.info. Now back to Sovryn Tech.
Who knew you could ride a bike so well?
I don't know if I can get us away from that helicopter. Don't you have a gun?
Oh, there's never a need for lethal force. I'll handle this.
How did you do that?
We'll be fine. A quick hack solves everything.
Hacksec.
It is time for Hacksec, where we talk hackers and security. And this week, I'm actually going to do a follow-up from something that we talked about with the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and the wild and sexy Paige Peterson last week. And that was the Facebook emotional contagion study. And the reason I'm talking about it during Hacksec, you might think it's kind of a loose reason to talk about it, but I think it's important, is because this is really social engineering. And social engineering, to many a hacker or cracker, is considered one of the most effective means of getting the information that you're looking for. Okay. And, or getting the results that you want. And this is definitely what Facebook was looking for, was results and info. So they're really playing with people's heads. For those, just as a recap, it was released that a study was done by Facebook where they were in about 700,000 people. They would, at certain points, they change the algorithm to where it would show all positive posts from their friends. And then suddenly, amazingly, people would post positive things. But then when they'd switch the algorithm to show negative things on these people's, news feeds, they would suddenly just start posting a bunch of negative shit as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it would seem that they were playing with people's heads. And of course, we found out that, DARPA to some degree may have been involved. We talked about that. And there's some people, ironically, there's some people that are saying that these studies, because we've got 10 more this week from Forbes, about that Facebook studies that they did. There are some people who think that these studies aren't a big deal. In fact, Mark Andreessen, someone who I got an email because I called Mark Andreessen an asshole. Okay. And I got an email from a listener that said, it's like, come on, I think you're being a little too hard on the guy. No, I don't think I'm being too hard at all. Okay. Mark Andreessen is the guy being hard on everybody else because he didn't think that Microsoft was playing fair. And, and then he came out and said, of course, he's heavily invested in Facebook. And he's like, oh, yeah, he just totally wrote off this emotional contagion stuff. He's like, oh, yeah, if you change your algorithm on a website, suddenly you did a psychological experiment and you're evil. Ooh, and he treated it very lightly when, like the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy said last week, how do we know somebody didn't kill themselves? Over what they saw on Facebook, because they were just so doused with with such negative and terrible things. Who knows? I mean, granted, yeah, you don't necessarily want to be acting upon the possibilities like that. Okay. But still to write it off as, oh, this is just stupid that people are concerned about it. No, these people's feelings are valid. In fact, they're so valid. That's why the study should have never been done in the first place. And I thought Stephanie was perfectly within her rights. And I thought it was beautiful when she just said, look, you fuckers need to get out of science. What are you people doing? And then that's something else that's come out of this story is that a lot of these scientific papers are the people in these journals, in the journal in the publishing process on these journals said, hey, we didn't say this was okay. Because I think they know that this is crap science and this is like completely unethical to do. So, but we got some beauties here. We've got 10 more. The hits just keep on coming. And this article's from Forbes and it's by Kashmir Hill. I like Kashmir Hill. She she's actually, she's not an anarchist at all, but she is one of those journalists that's like, okay, this is how some people think, and that's okay. And she moves on. So I can appreciate, even though, she loves her some state, I can appreciate that she is open to various things. So a former Facebook data scientist who set out to defend the company's emotion manipulation experiment on nearly 700,000 users decried the hubbub about it, saying that experiments are happening all the time at the company and that every Facebook user has been part of one at some point. Okay, so regardless, you as a Facebook user, me as a Facebook user, have been a part of a study at some point. Yes, we can all wear t-shirts saying, I too am a Facebook lab rat. Most of the quote-unquote experiments are A/B testing that's standard on the web and rather boring, such as which color blue you're most likely to click, or how big an ad needs to be for you to notice it. But some are interesting enough to warrant academic write-ups for shedding new light on human behavior. Here's other research done by Facebook data scientists on users, possibly on you, that we know about because it's been published. I've given each of these studies a what the fuck rating. In my opinion, the hubbub, including study in January 2012, which involved curating the emotional content of users' news feeds to see if Facebook could manipulate their emotions, is the most intrusive, what the fucky of experiments for poking and prodding users emotionally to see what happens. So that's the high end of the scale. These other studies run by Facebook data scientists, sometimes in collaboration with academic researchers, are in reverse chronological order. Facebook data scientists who pop up often as study curators are Adam Kramer, who conducted the emotion study, Cameron Marlowe, who founded Facebook's in-house sociology team, but has since left the company, and Dean Eccles, an academic cited in Ellie Parser's Filter Bubble for his work on persuasion. So, and that's an interesting point that she's bringing up, is that they've brought in a lot of people who have this background in psychology and in behaviorism. Which is, incredibly important. And it becomes scarier. I don't know if we talked about this. I want to get into one of the really bad ones. The article's in the show notes, sovryntech.com. You can check it out, of course. But one of the things I want to mention is that we read on Sovryn Tech, boy, this might have been in the episodes of the number 30s somewhere, where Ben Swan released a report where they were talking about wanting, they were talking about the government, that being the government was talking, how can we manipulate people via religions and all this stuff? And then, you read Facebook doing this, and yeah, it creeps you out when you start putting a lot of these ideas together, that there are just people that want to control you. And so I want to now all these studies were in the open. Okay. And I want to get into, let's see, here's one of the lower end ones. And then I want to get into what I thought was one of the bigger. This was the spread of emotion via Facebook. And it's what Facebook wanted to find out. Does your emotional state affect your friends? And when it happened was, it was a 3-day period during 2012. It was 151 million users. It was run by Adam Kramer. This was the precursor to the emotional contagion study. In this study, he just looked at 1 million users' status updates, rating them as positive or negative based on terms used, and then looked at the positivity or negativity of those posts, of those users' 150 million friends. And what Facebook found out was your happy updates lead friends to suppress their negative posts, and your negative posts lead them to suppress their happy ones. If you say something upbeat on Facebook, 1 out of every 100 friends who wouldn't have otherwise, according to the study, will do the same within 3 days. And so, this is interesting because actually Facebook, we know, can record whatever you type in, but then you delete and you don't post it. So everything you type into Facebook, they record. And so they could see this. Like if you were about to post a negative post, but then you went through your newsfeed and suddenly you saw happy stuff, and so you didn't post something negative, they could actually see that. Now, real quick on this, the part that kind of weirds me out is that if this is all so true, then, if you can manipulate people to be happy, what does this say about the newspaper? Like, newspapers full of bad news, right? And so, did someone know? Anyway, sorry, I don't even want to go down that road. That gets into some pretty heavy conspiracy. So they found out this was the precursor that really gave them the gusto, the idea that, yeah, let's try this bigger and see what happens. So anyway, she didn't give it that big of a deal with the what the fuck thing, because it's not like he changed the algorithm. He just observed in that case. So that one wasn't that big of a deal. But I want to go to the one that's really creepy. And I think a lot of people knew that this one actually happened. Like, I think people noticed it and saw it. And it's a 61 million person experiment in social influence and political mobilization. And what Facebook wanted to find out was, can it encourage people to vote? Funny, we were just talking about voting. When it happened, this was in the 2010 midterm election. So it's a good time to do it, because if it's just the midterms, if there's not a presidential vote, everybody kind of gets all happy-go-lucky about politics whenever it's a presidential year. But a midterm, not so many people come out and vote. So this is the time, if you could influence people, that you'd want to do it. And they offered, there's 61 million users over the age of 18. They offered test subjects an I voted button at the top of their news feeds and information on how to find their polling place. Some users also saw the names of their friends who had clicked the button. The control group got no prompt to vote. When the researchers checked public voting records to see which of the millions actually voted. So what did Facebook find out? Peer pressure works. People were more likely to click the I voted button if their friends' names appeared there. When researchers checked actual voting records, they found that people who got the I voted message in their newsfeed were 0.39% more likely to have actually voted, and were more likely to have voted if their friends' names appeared. Those are minuscule percentages, but the researchers think their experiment resulted in 340,000 votes that wouldn't have otherwise happened. The what the fuck score on this is high. While getting people to perform their civic duty and vote is an admirable enterprise, I of course would say it isn't, but I get it, Kashmir, this enters serious society control territory. As many critics have pointed out, Facebook could theoretically put the I voted button only in the feeds of users that are in favor of immigration reform, something Zuck has been pushing for recently, or only in the feeds of Republicans or Democrats to potentially swing elections. None of the users realized that they were part of this experiment, or that Facebook would go looking for their names in voting records. They did come up with a privacy-preserving way to do that. There's a link on how to find out how that happened. There wasn't an obvious business case for this one. It was a pure, can we really do this study? The researchers in the paper said they certainly want to do more of these. The growing availability of cheap and large-scale online social network data means that these experiments can be easily conducted in the field. If we want to truly understand and improve our society, well-being, and the world around us, it will be important to use these methods to identify which real-world behaviors are amenable to online interventions. The what the fuck score is high? Yeah, it's through the fucking roof. What the hell is this, Facebook? Swinging elections? Getting your way? Ooh. Now, let's make no mistake that any of these social networks would do the same goddamn thing, I'm sure. Okay? Let's not kid ourselves. Unless it's an interface that does not run off of advertising, say maybe something like liberty.me or whatever, or something that has its built-in currency like Matesit, whatever, something else. Okay. But any of these things, like we said earlier in the show, if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. You are the voting public, and we want to swing you in our direction. And to make it worse, they've got the proof that the researchers said, oh, we got to do more of these. But don't let anybody know. Oh, this is some fucked up shit. Fucked up shit. And I remember I saw it. I saw where it said, fortunately at the time, I was definitely on my anarchist way. And I saw, it's like, oh, vote for this. I was like, I'm not voting for shit. Get that out of my Facebook feed. Who knew that it was a study? And they said, yeah, that's a pretty small percentile to swing. That was almost 500,000 votes that they think they may have swung, that they have gotten people to vote. This isn't this is behavioral control. This isn't emotional control. This is getting people to get up off their butt and go down to the voting booth. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of people, even libertarians, would be like, well, I think that's just dandy. No, this isn't dandy. Then somebody's going to email me and say, what about TGI Fridays, TGIF or Boston Market having an advertisement about food? Anyway, not going there. But boy, what more reason do you need to quit Facebook than that? Hey, everybody. I really appreciate all of you that listen to Sovryn Tech. I hope you have as much fun listening to the show as I do making it. And hey, if you have a good time listening or learn something from listening, you can donate to the show. Just look in the show notes at sovryntech.com. There you'll see addresses for Bitcoin, BLACKCOIN, Next, LITECOIN, whole slew of ways to donate to the show. And believe me, I'm not going to complain if you only send 2 millibits or what equates to $2, unlike some people. But, also you can donate via PayPal using the affiliate links on the left-hand side of sovryntech.com. And oh yes, please feel free to use those affiliate links. You can also help the show by circling me on Google+, following me on Twitter, or following Sovryn Tech on SoundCloud. Anything you can do to help, believe me, it helps. So I love all of you, and thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back to more Sovryn Tech. Well, looks like we made it out of the country. Good driving. Let's find some place to relax.
Somewhere with a nice big bed, I think. Let me pull up an app.
Sounds good to me.
Software of the week.
Ooh, boy. Yeah. Oh, Facebook. Anyway, let's get into the software of the week. And this is an idea that I think its time is definitely here. Maybe we need to actually go a hell of a lot farther than what this has in mind. But I thought this was an intriguing idea, and it's certainly a direction I wouldn't mind things going. And the software of the week this week is called SyncNet, and it's a decentralized web browser. Okay, and I'll just read real quick here. Imagine if we lived in a world where more demand meant less load for a web server. Imagine if we lived in a world where no organization could take down a website, and everyone could publish a site with no hassle or upfront cost. SyncNet is a first step into that world. SyncNet is an experimental new browser built on top of BitTorrent Sync and, soon, colored coins. Every time you access a site, you store all of its contents on your machine. The next user to request the site can get the contents from both your machine and the original server. As more people access a page, it becomes available from more machines, reducing the load on the original server. Now, admittedly, I'm not sure what exactly the development stage is for SyncNet. I mean, when things like MadeSafe kind of come out, it makes you wonder, do you even need something like SyncNet? But SyncNet, by and large is running off of, by using colored coins, it is running off of like the NAMECOIN principle, which I'm still a huge fan of NAMECOIN. In fact, I think a lot of people expect NAMECOIN to just be kind of useless since NXT and even BLACKCOIN and others can do that DNS system built into the platform, into the crypto platform already. That may not be so because, I don't see Bitcoin really going away as much as things have superseded it. But so if Bitcoin's not going to go away, I don't see why the .bit domain names from NAMECOIN would go away either, because NAMECOIN and Bitcoin kind of sit side by side. But maybe SyncNet is the system that's the way to go, or I don't think it's the way to go, but maybe for people that is far more palatable, instead of creating an entire other internet, you would have SyncNet that works off of BitTorrent Sync, and that works on some principles that maybe people would be, again, that would just be more palatable. BitTorrent Sync is actually a really cool idea. It's closed source, so, one can decide how much they want to trust it. But the idea is that it makes exact copies of everything you have back and forth. And one of the beauties of BitTorrent Sync is that it works on mobile devices, on your smartphone or wherever else. And it's pretty slick technology. BitTorrent is out of Israel, and they really have some great devs over there, even though, again, all of it is really closed source. So, a lot of their advancements that they've made are closed source. So I think SyncNet is really a very clever idea. And it's something that maybe if it has gone into development hell, maybe somebody wants to pick up the ball and run with it. I am okay. I want a multitude of systems out there. I want a multitude of redundant systems. This is my point. I want internets. It's what I've been saying for months. I want internets, not just one. I don't mind if there's a bunch of different ideas, even if maybe for some people, one idea makes the other pointless. Value is subjective. Maybe someone won't find the idea pointless. Maybe something, people that like the BitTorrent sync idea want to have that where it's a complete cache back and forth and everybody can bounce around. Maybe that's a good, solution for mesh networking. So check out SyncNet. Link is in the show notes. And you can email me and let me know what you think about that idea. I'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Oh, Natalia.
Oh, it feels so good. I'm so close.
I know what you need.
The climax.
It is time for the climax. Boy, I don't think I'm ever going to get sick of that intro. At some point, I'm going to do different, lead-ins at each segment, but I think the climax is always going to have to be something like that. Anyway, let's see. The pick of the week, it is not pick of the week. It is the climax. And the climax is where I talk about really whatever I want to talk about. It could be a topic, a TV show, a movie, whatever. It could be anything. And this week I actually have a TV show. But before I get into the TV show, okay, and believe me, when I talk about this TV show, I am going into the highly theoretical, and I am going into what I used to call crazy town. Okay, where I have very little to back anything up, and I'm just going with conjecture and totally projecting my own desires, perhaps, onto something. Okay, but before I get into that, Transcendence. I saw this. Okay, Johnny Depp. It was supposed to be this big deal of a movie. It got mixed reviews, I guess. I give it in the old-fashioned Roger Ebert days, I give it 2 thumbs down, way down. I've never, it's really kind of sad because there's so much, it seems like in Hollywood, you take movies like Elysium and some others, and I mean, you're getting loaded with so much BS agenda in entertainment today, like in a really bad way. And it's not even like allowing it to question. It's setting it up as this is the truth. This is the sadness. This is the blah, blah, blah. There is no other way to think about it. This is how you do it. As to where, good entertainment, like say Babylon 5, presents a multitude of ideas and agendas and treats them as, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? It doesn't lay them out as this is how it is. In fact, actually, Babylon 5 is about the conflict of ideas. And that, one may not be better than the other, back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, enough of that. But I saw Transcendence, and I thought, honestly, I thought this was an absolute hit piece on anybody that questions cloud computing, that questions artificial intelligence, that questions all kinds of these, technologies that the biggest companies in the world, IBM, Google, whoever else, is trying to develop right now. It was really an attack on them. And, trying to make, give machines a certain degree of humanity and all this stuff is really, it was something I was not pleased with the movie at all. I mean, it was a mess narratively anyway, but I didn't care for it. So I didn't give any details away. I know it's still kind of hot and out there. So, I don't want to do any spoilers. So, but let's move on to perhaps, honestly, the opposite spectrum, ironically, the opposite spectrum of Transcendence. And it's the Herculoids. I'm sure there's a collective laugh for anyone that knows what I just said. The Herculoids, what the Herculoids was, is a cartoon series by Hanna-Barbera. Now, granted, I'm kind of in that sweet spot of history where I know about some of these things, from way back. And I'm also like, I'm still a millennial. yes, technically I'm a millennial. So if you've never seen the Herculoids, good luck trying to find and watch it. Maybe you can catch it on YouTube. I don't know. There are ways to download it, of course. And it was made by Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera was a huge cartoon production house from really the 60s onward, and they were notorious for their production a lot of times. But they ended up making some of the best cartoons in history. Go down the list. Anyway, moving on. So the Herculoids first started, 1968, around there. Kind of had a rehash in the early 80s, as in like 81, 82. So it all really existed long before I was born. I was born in 81, so I guess it was kind of there for then. So it was something that I was able to, as a kid, I was able to rent from the library, okay? And I could watch it on VHS. Remember those? And I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really cool. And what it's about this character, it's about kind of a family, but it's about this character named Xandor, okay, and his wife, Tara. Now, they have a son, Dorno. His name's Dorno, but there's an oddity. Okay, well, let me explain a little bit more about the plot. So they are on a planet, and the planets had a couple of names. It was Amzat, and then it was Quasar. So I'm going to call it Amzat, just for simplicity. And Xandor and his family are on Amzat, okay? And they get continually, they have these creatures called the Herculoids that live with them, like Zak, Egu, Tundrong, Gloop, and Gleep. And they're all these really wild creatures that do seem to have a degree of intelligence about them. And they're just enjoying life. They live on this, kind of it's a planet that has a bunch of different ecosystems in it. There's jungles, there's deserts, there's all this wild business. And they live a very non-technological life on there. But they're constantly getting attacked by aliens that land on there, or, some kind of crap happens for someone from space lands on there, and they have to deal with it. Okay. And so it's all pretty standard fare. You might not see a whole lot going on there, but I think there's quite a bit to be said in the ideology behind the Herculoids, or at least behind Xandor, because there's a bit of a mystery with Xandor. There's a few mysteries. One of the one that I was going to originally lead into, which is interesting, is that Dorno, their son, Xandor and Tara's son, doesn't call them mom and dad. Now, I guess in the 80s version, which I never really caught that, I only saw the 60s ones, he does. But in the 60s, in the original series, Dorno calls him, just doesn't say, hey, dad. He says, hey, Xandor, hey, Tara. That's interesting. Okay. So, if one really wanted to, like I said, I'm going to project things on there. If one wanted to project something, this is clearly a group of three humans who by and large seem to live a pretty anarchist lifestyle on the planet Amzat, and there's no hierarchy, as in Dorno says, oh, yes, father, I'll do this, blah, blah, blah. He talks to them like they're a person, and they talk to Dorno like he's a person. They all treat each other as equals. It's pretty wild. And certainly Tara is a very strong female character that very much handles herself, which is impressive in the 60s to have the female character be such a tough badass, which I think is great. I love it. So you have that mystery. Now, the second mystery that you have is that, again, like I said, they're living somewhat of a primitive lifestyle, and they dress very primitively. Like Xandor wears a loincloth, and Tara is not wearing much else. But every time these alien villains land, or sometimes it's not villains, sometimes it's a good guy who's in trouble or something. Every time they land on Amzat, they know who Xandor is. Now, of course, this is just for simplicity of, storytelling and getting a good action cartoon out to kids on Saturdays, right? There's not a whole lot of episodes of this. It used to be like it was only, it was like 36 segments, and it was part of like an action hour or an action half hour, and each episode was only, really a few minutes long or so. This wasn't a highly developed show, so you had to cut to the chase. There wasn't time for the alien really to learn about Xandor, okay, and his quote-unquote family. And I say quote-unquote family because it doesn't really act like a family so much. And So, but the interesting thing is that does leave a degree of mystery about the character of Xandor, is that he's clearly living with these other people. He's living this very primitive life, but he has no problem with using, when it's available, or understanding, when it's around, technology. And the aliens always know who he is. Like, as in, somehow he has this past where he was traveling the galaxy. And keep that in mind, too. Xandor and the Herculoids and Dorno and Tara, they all understand that there's like galactic empires and that, there's other worlds and all that. They're not stupid. Xandor seems to have chosen to live this way. It seems like he's a guy that just wanted to get away from it all. And his cohorts decided to go with him. The Herculoids, it seems like they may be from Amzat. That's never really made clear or not. So, but I find this really interesting, this whole idea. And it kind of makes you think about, the idea of, because a lot of people are pushing for this today, where they're saying, look, our technological lives are actually, our centralized technological lives, the technological lives that are getting us away from localism, from getting to like know our neighbors, things of that nature. Okay. Not saying that you have to do that or somehow that's better than not knowing them. Okay. Just putting out this viewpoint out there that knowing their, this local, this idea of community and whatever is being completely destroyed, or this idea of having your own thoughts, or this idea of like dealing with boredom. Have you ever heard that? Some people say that boredom is actually a very healthy thing for you to have at points, because it gives you a chance to reflect upon what you've done, upon your day and whatever else, instead of just always having a screen in your face feeding you with information that may be positively meaningless to your own health. All of that. There's people who are saying, we need to maybe back off a bit from where we're going because we're so busy wondering if we could. We never stop to think if we should. Jurassic Park. And so this kind of highlights that maybe there's a character, maybe there's a guy that like Xandor, who just thinks, that's just been through so much shit that he's tired of life on the galactic scale. And he just wants to, go kick back on some planet like Amzat with, some crazy Herculoids, his wife and a son. And who knows, maybe he's just, him and Tara run off into the woods. They have themselves a good time. They rock and roll. And I mean, whatever. They just, they kick back and enjoy life. And so but again, I'm placing far more importance on a little Saturday morning cartoon than there really is. Okay. But I'll admit, I find it rather sexy. If you listen to my Sovryn Top 8 about science fiction films, I talked about Logan's Run, where I thought it was really hot, where Logan and Jessica 5 get out of the domes, out of the pleasure domes, and there they are, just, like Adam and Eve on the earth. And how I said is like, I kind of find that pretty hot, to just like have the whole world sort of to yourself and maybe a few others. And like, that can be pretty sexy, and you have a good time, and you hop into the river naked and everything. And, I wonder, I thought, just thinking back on Herculoids, I really think that's pretty awesome. What about, it doesn't seem like Xandor is completely without technology. Maybe it's just technology that melds so well in with the ecology that you don't notice it, and that it complements their life and the ecology as compared to, hammering it into a different shape. It's not something to consider. It's a way to look at it. Maybe have fun. And if anything, I got you to watch a cartoon from the 60s. If you can find it. So, the Herculoids, check it out. I think it was fun. And, it kind of lends some interesting ideas to the Paleolithic lifestyle that I had been talking about with the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy in past episodes, which in the future, I think we may revisit those times. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the show. Next week, be looking for this episode. We're going to talk so much NXT, your head's going to spin, and you're going to be buying as much as you can. So listen to it. Carpe Lucem. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com That's SOVRYN tech.com. And connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.